Brad Keselowski gets ready for the second of 2 Sprint Cup practices today. Carl Edwards ready to roll. First practice had only 13 cars. Brian Scott among those. And yet 5 fast ones are lined up and ready to go. It's Daytona 500 practice on FS1 presented by Toyota. Well, what did we learn in practice 1 other than drivers baiting each other with taunts about their athletic ability? Let's set that aside. In practice 2, now some teams have their Daytona 500 engine in. It doesn't have to be in until final practice tomorrow. We see a number of top drivers, Darrell, out there ready to go that did not participate in the first practice today.
Yeah, rule of thumb with the race engine is you'd like to put 50 miles on it. You'd like to put it in the car running about 50 miles. That way the engine guy can check. He can bore scope down in the cylinders. They can check the valves, the rocker arms, and all that stuff, and know it's good for 500 miles. So it wouldn't surprise me if most of these guys haven't swapped over to their race engine.
And it looks like we're going to have single car runs again in this practice. Jimmy Johnson, Chad Knaus style, kind of following that MO of searching for speed.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I mean, and it makes it interesting, I think, for all the teams to just sort of see who does have the most speed as the grill is opened up and there's not as much tape on the front, not in qualifying trim. And is that going to correlate to a car fast enough to win the Daytona 500? Not necessarily. I think there's plenty of cars out there that can still win this Daytona 500 without that kind of top speed, but it's fun for us to watch.
Yeah.
All right, let's have a look at the racetrack.
Some pretty good cars on track right now.
You know, Darrell, you were talking about all the things, putting time on these engines. What you also want to find out is how's the performance of this engine. I mean, these engine builders go through a lot to get these engines down here and to qualify for the Daytona 500. And a lot of times, some teams will bring an engine that's better for qualifying than the race. Some will actually have a better race engine than a qualifying engine.
I've always found that I save my best engine for the race. And here's the other thing, too. Now, we've been running these engines pretty much on kill. I mean, they've had them leaned out. They've had timing maxed out in them because they're short races. Now you're going to go into a more conservative mode. You got to have to decide how much fuel do you want to burn. That'll be in the ECU, you know, where you can have a couple of different settings there. Timing, things of that nature, things that will make the engine run longer, and last for 500 miles.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there, DW, talking about putting those engines to the test through qualifying, getting ready to make a all-important qualifying run. And then even last night in the duel, maybe pushing the limits. It was a little bit cooler at night, pushing the limits on the tape. We saw a lot of debris, some cars overheating. They know they can put that engine through a little more stress, but now it's all about the Daytona 500, and you got to be a little more careful with this engine.
It's been so windy, Jeff, and Mike, you know this too, that we've seen a lot of debris blowing around the speedway. There's really no excuse for that other than it's just been windy. And so, you know, hot dog wrappers or plastic bags or anything that's left loose in the infield or around the racetrack is going to end up on the racetrack. And I guess it's not ironic, but the leader seems to be the one that gets it the most.
Well, we said that in the Sprint Unlimited. You know, the leader has the advantage of being out front, but he has the disadvantage of cleaning the track for everybody when you have a big pack of cars. And that's what happened to Brad Keselowski. He picked up it was a large piece of plastic, and it almost looked to me like an unfolded trash can liner. It was, you know, got pretty beat up on there, but it was a pretty heavy plastic, and it wasn't coming off.
No, they had a hard time pulling that out. Now, one thing I like to do, though, listen to these engines. As you go around this racetrack, the pitch hardly ever changes. The RPM hardly ever changes all the way around this speedway. You hear Joey Logano in the 22. He's just coming up to speed, coming out of the pits, coming up on the back straightaway here. And once he gets this thing up to full song, it pretty much stays there the whole time.
And you heard him switch into 4th gear. I believe it's 4th gear there. And it does that little, and it's interesting the way that the drive shaft and the rear end and the gear and everything and all that power as it goes into that final gear and it pulls through it, it does this little shimmy and shake, especially if you don't take your time to pull it into gear. You just sort of force it in there. It's what all the teams do, but it is, I thought it was very interesting to hear it so vividly in that shot.
Well, let's find out from Matt Yoakum what the strategy is for Team Penske in this practice.
Well, Mike, it's a beautiful day if you're a race fan in the stands. The cooler temperatures and the wind gusts, though, completely different than what we are expecting to see on Sunday for the 500. It's building warmer each and every day with less wind. That being said, Team Penske's plan is simple. Due to those conditions, they're going to put more focus and emphasis on tomorrow's final practice session because it will be so close to race condition. Today, they're just focusing on basically a leak in vibration test. Both teams put in their race engines for the 500, so they're just going to make sure everything is A-OK before they park it for the day. Jamie Little?
Well, some changes for the 47 team in the offseason, and A.J. Allmendinger. For one, he has a new crew chief, and Randall Burnett here getting put to the test here at Speed Weeks. They got caught up in the first race last week in the Sprint Unlimited, and last night they were caught up in the melee at the end of the dual race. So as a result, they are in a backup car. AJ is behind the wheel now, just getting ready to go out. The good news for this team, though, they tell me these two cars are brand new, the primary and the backup, and this backup is almost identical to what they brought. And AJ just told me it was one of the better speedway races he's ever had last night. Very encouraged by what kind of speed they were showing. He's going to go out and do a couple single car runs here, but he told me he is staying away from traffic, Mike.
Thanks, Jamie. Don't blame him. Burnett was Kyle Larson's engineer last year. This year, crew chief for A.J. Allmendinger. Jamie McMurray has the, oh no, Trevor Bayne has the fastest lap of this practice. Welcome back to Daytona. Look at Ryan Blaney in that 21 there. Drafting in practice gives him the fastest lap of this session as he drafts along with Joey Logano.
Just looks like a little leisurely Sunday drive. It's anything but. Maybe right now in a 3-car draft, but I can promise you on Sunday when they get that big draft, it's anything but that. I really want to talk about Ryan Blaney. He did an excellent job last night. We didn't really get to fully document it. There's so much going on at the end of that race, and he kind of came from nowhere to get up there and finish third in that race. But to get a lap down, keep your composure as a team, as a driver, stay out of trouble, and come back all the way up into that. Correct me if I'm wrong, it was third position.
I think he finished third, yeah.
It was phenomenal.
It really was.
Absolutely phenomenal, and that's exactly the way that you want to get your speed week started.
And Jeff, we never mentioned it, but he pitted early because he had a vibration, and they actually had a loose wheel. And once they got the wheels on, got them all tight, and he was able to work his way back into the lead lap.
Now, Jeff and I both thought that he had gone 2 laps down, and perhaps he had. He got 1 lap back during the green flag cycle of pit stops, and then he got the free pass, the lucky dog, under the caution, and got the other lap back to get back on the lead lap. Let's check with Jamie.
And Danica Patrick was out on track doing a little draft practice with her boyfriend Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And I talked to Danica right before she got in the car, and she said yesterday she had bent some things when she made the transition onto the apron. So today it was really important not just to go out and check travels by herself, but she wanted to run with some cars and get a real good idea of how the travels are, how the splitter sits, and make sure everything is good with her race car. So expect her to go back out after this stint in the garage.
Trevor Bayne, 3rd car in that draft on the left of your screen. Happy birthday.
That reminds me when he won this thing 3 years ago now. It was his birthday, and he had a great celebration. Remember, Mike, he didn't come prepared for that at all. He had driven down here. He didn't bring any extra clothes.
No, drove his pickup down from Knoxville.
Yeah, from Tennessee.
And left as a Daytona 500 champion.
Yeah, he did.
I bet he didn't drive his truck home.
Had somebody drive it.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, he did? Good for him.
A lot of other drivers left in their jets very disappointed. 20 years and 1 day old. Now, how about this group? Martin Truex Jr. second in line. He now has the fastest lap from Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch and Carl Edwards. That is a
fast 4-car Toyota freight there. Mike,
and sorry, DW, if you're asking, well, how can the second place car go faster than the first place car? All it takes, and you can see just how close it is, what, 0.03 of a mile per hour. All it takes is just a little bit of momentum right as you cross the line. Boom, you're faster than the guy in front of you.
We had mentioned in our first practice about your backup car. I can't tell you, I've seen it time and time again. You get the backup car out. The reason it wasn't your primary car is, well, it's got a little bit more downforce, it's got a little bit more drag than the car that we were going to race. And the driver gets in that car and he goes out in race conditions and he says, man, I love this car because it stuck to the racetrack, and that's what you want for 500 miles.
Toyota looking for their first win in the Daytona 500. Kyle Busch gave them their first Sprint Cup championship last year. And at the head of the line is the fellow who actually gave Toyota their first Sprint Cup win, Denny Hamlin. That was in the Bud Shootout, non-point race.
It was their first win.
But he went to victory lane. Yep, proud of that.
These are all 4 Toyotas that you are going to have to beat in the Daytona 500, especially Denny Hamlin. I mean, he's very good on these restrictor plate tracks, and he has a fast race car.
So as 4 Toyotas draft together on track, and another Matt Kenseth's backup car still being prepared. Let's go to Jamie Little for today's Toyota team update.
And the good news for Matt Kenseth fans, he is behind the wheel, ready to roll out. Jason Ratcliffe is on the radio talking to his driver. I talked to Jason, and he said this car, the backup, has been in the fleet for quite some time, but it never has been raced. They swapped over the shocks and the springs, and they've been working to make this car good enough to get out there and practice right now. But the plan is to run by themselves, stay away from the other cars, and then tomorrow they'll do some draft practice with their teammates. So once again, this was the front row starter, but he will drop to the back at the start of the race because he's in a backup.
He's still got the second pick of pit stalls behind pole sitter Chase Elliott, and he chose the last stall, stall number 43, from which Matt Kenseth won the 500 in 2012. Another Toyota driver trying to hook up with that pack is Matt DiBenedetto, who had the fastest speed of all of the open Toyotas, those not guaranteed into the race, and then raced his way into the 500 last night. Kyle Busch has gone to the top of the practice chart. Fastest speeds in this practice. We expected single car runs, and yet teammates have been going out and doing some drafting, including the 4 Toyotas at the top of the board. Here is Chase Elliott, who is 13th on the speed chart.
But Mike, that makes sense to me. If on one of these latter stages of these practices, the Daytona is the next big thing we're going to do, run with your teammates. That way you kind of know what you got. There's no unknowns when you're running with your teammates.
Now Denny Hamlin dropped back to make a pass on Matt DiBenedetto, and then he caught the 4-car draft ahead of him kind of effortlessly. He was about 20 car lengths back and reeled them in over the course of about 3 laps.
Oh, he said this car wasn't quite as good as his Unlimited car. They had a little work to do on it. Apparently they worked it over pretty good.
I was going to say that was impressive. You know, first we saw him shoot by DiBenedetto, and then he went up, and he was a long ways back. You're right, Mike, and he caught this group. That's impressive. And didn't we just hear that Matt Kenseth was not going to go out and draft in this practice? And
yeah, well,
his teammates caught him.
I didn't mean to.
He's not drafting. The drivers behind him are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2 of those 5 are backup cars, Kenseth and the 78 for Martin Truex.
And I will say this, the one thing that I don't like about doing single car runs is that the speeds that you're running are so far off of what you're going to be doing in the draft. And when you're in the draft, because you're running higher speeds, the car gets into the racetrack, compresses into the racetrack. So if you really want to know what your heights are going to be in a race condition, you really want to get up to speed and run those kinds of speeds. Maybe you don't want to be 3 wide in the middle of a big pack, but I do like that they're on the front of this pack, or this group of cars right here, and getting some really good, valuable information.
Yeah, you kind of go to another level when you're with I mean, I've seen cars that were terrible, wouldn't run a lick till they got in the draft.
Well, and we've seen when we start a lot of these races, all of a sudden sparks are flying off the cars because they have not been in the conditions to run those types of speeds.
Now, I believe these are the fastest speeds we've seen all week. I don't think we've seen a 200-mile-per-hour lap, but Denny Hamlin's lap that was the quickest, his 9th of 11 so far, only lacked 0.07 of a second of being a 200-mile-an-hour lap.
Well, we had McDowell in one of the practices early on running over 200.
That's right.
But remember, and Jeff and I talked about this a little bit ago, you save your best for last. You put your best, you got your best setup, you got your best car, and trust me, you got your best engine in these cars ready for the 500. We're getting ready to run the big show. I always like the engine man. The engine man would tell you, you say, well, I just don't know if I got the speed or not. Wait till Sunday. You know, we got a little something for you for Sunday.
And to me, when I watch these Toyotas run together, they're getting laps, but they're building a relationship that is going to transfer over. I'm sure that this may be let down from the manufacturers as well as JGR. These are all, they're sharing information with that 78 team and technology between them. And so now they can work together as if they're all teammates. And it's like adding another team to JGR in a way.
And 2 of those 5 have a new crew chief, another's in a new make of car this year. So a lot to learn and build on this week in Daytona.
I tell you, that 11 car, second car in line, now he can pull out and pass when he wants to. He's pretty steamy.
Yeah. Down to the garage and Matt.
Jimmy Johnson, one of 13 drivers that went out in the first practice session, went out and made a few laps in this one as well. You're in a backup, and due to the fact that your game plan for plate races, always to do single car runs primarily, does that give you a great opportunity to A and B what was your primary car against the backup, to know how much speed and drivability you have?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then also you're minimizing risks. And you know, this is our last car, so if something happened in one of the practice sessions, we'd be going to a teammate or somebody trying to use one of their backups and then put a wrap over the top of it, and that's just a world we don't want to be in. And frankly, we get a lot of experience in the draft through all the races that take place, and it's been something that we've done enough, and we know what our race time adjustments need to be and the balance that I'm looking for. So for us, it's just business as usual, and it gives everybody else something to talk about.
Pretty much, do they mirror each other as far as speed?
Wind direction's a lot different today, and speeds are higher. So we feel very comfortable with this car. I think we finished second with it at Talladega last year. It has a lot of speed, plus pace is faster today. We didn't want to lose that race car last night, but things are going really well with this car.
Thank you, Jimmy. Now, this is the car that he used at Talladega, and Jamie Little, they're swapping over to their Daytona 500 engine right now. The guys are already going to work.
And the guys have been working on the 42 of Kyle Larson. Remember, he was involved in an issue on Wednesday in practice, went to a backup car. You raced it last night, but I see it got a little damaged. What happened?
Yeah, last night in that last little wreck, I missed it, but I had to go down to the apron, and it's the transition from the banking to the flats, a big difference. So it bent the left side of the nose up, so they fixed it, and now we're just going to make a couple runs, make sure everything's fine, and call it a day.
It's been a busy day for Kyle Larson, who's doing double duty, racing in the Xfinity Series race as well.
Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex, Kyle Busch, Carl Edwards, Matt Kenseth. 5 Toyotas lead 4 Fords, and then 5 Chevrolets on the speed chart. Very interesting speed chart for this practice session that has 30 seconds to go. The fastest 5 are Toyotas. The next 4 are Fords. The next 5 are Chevrolet. The next 3 are Fords. It's kind of like a motorized version of Noah's Ark, just with more players, but they're all together.
Think about it this way. You'd think somebody down there would run out of ideas of things to try. Sooner or later, okay, we've tried everything in the book, but it never fails. You practice, 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 change things on the car, go run it.
Tell you one thing I liked last night in the duel was hearing Tony Stewart's voice over the radio to his substitute driver, Brian Vickers.
Yeah.
That was, I think, reassuring not only for Brian, but, just on all levels, because we really miss him.
Oh, we all miss him, and a lot of fans are missing him being in this Daytona 500, and I thought it was fantastic to hear his voice. I'm hoping that it won't be long before maybe we even see him at a race.
Now, this is scheduled to be his final season, and already people are asking, well, Tony missed the Daytona 500. Will he come back and run it next year and have one more chance to win this race? You never know.
You never know. But here's the thing. I bet you, the same way I was with Kyle Busch, people just don't understand the resolve of an athlete. he's going to work out every day. That's his focus. Get well, get back in the car. By May, probably by Charlotte, he'll be back in that car.
Hope so.
I hope so as well.
Yep. Austin Dillon, after just one lap, 26th on the speed chart, getting himself up to speed here. In contrast to the first session where 13 drivers ran, we've already had 29 of the 40 starters in the 500. It's kind of a sad parade this morning as the haulers for the drivers who did not make the race rolled out of Daytona about 7:30 this morning. But 40 cars, that is a change, but it's not the first time we've had a 40-car field. And here are the drivers who did not earn the one transfer spot available in the 2 races last night.
Now, I'm listening to Clint Bowyer's engine here, and if you listen to that engine, and it just doesn't have quite the ring or the sharp sound that I've heard out of some of the Toyotas and some of the Hendrick Motorsports cars.
Well, that is a Hendrick engine, but I don't know if maybe they've done something different with their exhaust, you know, and their tailpipes, the way they run them, and so it just doesn't have the same sound. But I would certainly think, and I'm just guessing,
yeah,
that you know, just knowing Hendrick Motorsports and the way that they operate their engine department, that all those engines that are down here are very, very close.
Now the teams do have a choice of 2 rear end gears, and seeing only 8,200 RPM out of Clint, could they have gone to the taller gear, or is everybody already running the taller gear?
That's a good question.
It's a good question whether the teams are willing to give that information up. Okay. Number one, I would have thought most teams would have been on the taller gear, but not exactly sure. But yeah, I really liked how you could hear the engine sort of lug down as you get in. You talk about friction and things that and drive lines and vibrations. You could really hear as he went into the banking, as that car set into the banking, and that's when you start to see those RPMs drop just ever so slightly, even though it's not a lot. It's just maybe 100, maybe 200 RPM depending on the wind direction, but it definitely lugs that engine and really loads it up.
Well, there's a couple of ways to win $1 million here in Florida. One is to track that orange and white and green car carrying the colors of the Florida Lottery. Here's the other. You could win $1.5 million. Imagine that. All you have to do is pick the top 10 finishers in the Daytona 500 in order. You go to foxsports.com/Daytona Pick 10 and make your choices. We will reveal our choices toward the end of tomorrow's final practice show, and you must enter prior to Sunday. So unless you're Landon Castle, who's hit the lottery here in Daytona, come along and play our game. Welcome back to Daytona. No change in the top 15 or so. Austin Dillon's broken into the top 20.
Challenge all night long, basically, with debris sticking to the grill screen, which is below the actual grill decal on the nose of his number 2 car. And Paul Wolf, you changed the grill screen for the duel. Now you're back to the original grill screen. Have you diagnosed what your issue was, or are you comfortable now with what you have?
Well, I mean, NASCAR regulates the overall size of the opening, but you can run different style screens or different options there, and obviously we had a lot of trouble with that in the Unlimited. We were trying to look at some different options last night just to see if we can make any gains there, and you know, it's tough. I mean, it's all small stuff, but overall we just kind of went back to what we know, and that's what we're gonna do, and hopefully we can keep this Miller Lite Ford up front and not have those issues.
What's the difference between the screen you use in the Unlimited versus the one in the duel?
Just the overall size of the wire. Trying to keep, you know, stuff from getting inside. You know, we run obviously an inner screen in the ductwork, but you know, there's a lot of options for the outside depending on what size debris you get, whether you let some of it go through or the tighter screen stops it.
Thank you, Paul. Mike?
That's my kind of crew chief. Paul Wolf was a regular in the NASCAR Busch North Series and raced here at Daytona in what's now the Xfinity Series about 12 years ago.
I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
You know, if you really want to be able to relate to what a driver is telling you and really get, you know, detailed into how you're going to engineer that car, how you're going to fix that car, how you're going to make that car go faster. You have to understand what the driver's going through. I love crew chiefs that have engineering background and driving background.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we used to run at some racetracks. I don't think we ever did here at Daytona, but we ran what we called a shaker screen, which was a screen that went behind the grill. And it was fixed in there so that it would shake,
right,
and any debris that came through the grill would hit that shaker screen and fall down into the ductwork.
Hard to tell the size of the wire mesh there. There's, again, some NASCAR rules involved.
I'm positive it's smaller than it was. I think they had some pretty big openings in that wire for the Unlimited the other night.
Yeah, and the reason why they want to stick with this one, if this is going back to the one they originally had the trouble, is just how the airflow goes through there, and not only for cooling, but also for aerodynamics, what's going to give them the least amount of drag and the proper amount of cooling.
Well, NASCAR is going to come with a radiator that everybody will have to run, because we spent, even back in the day, and I know you know, we spent thousands of dollars on radiators, and it could be just a matter of changing the angle of the fins, all kind of little things, the size of the tanks, and all, but many things.
It's confirmed that the screen they ran in the Unlimited was a smaller, tighter mesh than what they ran in Thursday's duel. Jamie?
And another Ford driver here, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., 8 laps in this practice, but you guys also practiced earlier today. Did you make any gains on it?
Yeah, I think we did. We just wanted to kind of fine-tune our fast and all Ford. We felt really good with it in the dual race last night. Everything went according to plan. We had to start in the back, so we rode there with our teammates, and then kind of ran up through there at the end and got a decent finish out of it. So everything went according to plan. We still got our best car that we brought down here, and that was the goal, to get to the 500 with that, with our best car. And we learned a little bit there, did a little bit of drafting just to kind of see what the temperatures were going to be like now that, we're out here in the daytime, practicing, which a lot cooler last night versus what it's going to be on Sunday.
Thanks, Ricky.
No change at the top of the chart as practice rolls on. 19 minutes to go in this session. Denny Hamlin still fastest. If you look at the right side column, you'll see the nice orderly progression of makes as teammates and drivers in the same make have been out there running in groups. And that continues down through about 17th place.
I think that's the way to do it now. You're this close to race time. Man, get out there with people you know and people you can trust.
Those are the 30 out of 40 drivers who have practiced in this session, including Michael in a backup car.
I like the way this car looks. It reminds me of some throwback. I think of Sterling Marlin. Remember Sterling Marlin, the Maxwell House car?
Or Bobby Labonte.
Bobby Labonte, yeah.
Who else this morning did they say? Hut Strickland, I guess, drove for Maxwell House for a while. Yeah.
I don't know, but I drink a lot of Maxwell House. I know that.
Nice
I always have. It's been my favorite coffee forever. Good to the last drop.
Jamie.
And Austin Dillon in the 3-car went out and turned some laps, and he had a vibration. Slugger Labby, his crew chief, just told me they had to flip the drive shaft 180. They're going to go back out and see if that fixed the problem. And he said, hey, that's practice at Daytona, typical, not worried about anything. And it's surprising. Look at Austin Dillon, only 25 years old, already making his 6th start in the Daytona 500.
Wow, that's right. Okay, so something's vibrating. Where do you start?
Drive shaft first. That's the first thing you go to. You rotate at 180 and you go see if that fixes the problem.
I would love to know where they came up with this whole theory about flipping it, because since I've been in the Cup Series, that's never worked for me.
That's the first thing we always did.
You can give me a new drive shaft. You can give me the way they shim it and how it mounts up to the transmission. A lot of different things, but I've never had flipping it 180 degrees. help any vibration I ever had.
Yeah, it always seemed to. I mean, you got the yoke on the gear back there. You've got the drive shaft, and they are balanced. But I've just seen the way they go into the yoke in the rear end. If you get it, there's just enough there that you get a little tingle, and you just change that thing 180 degrees. And sometimes that fixes it. If it doesn't, then you got to go dig deep then.
Yeah.
And it can be a number of things. It can be pinion angle. It can be all kinds of angles that something's often got that drive shaft shaking.
And a lot of these teams have chassis dynos back at their race shops, or maybe they can go and borrow or rent one from another team, and they put their car on there and run it up through the gears, and and they can even pull the car down and get it into travel to try to find all those things before you ever get to the racetrack.
That's why when we talk about sciencing these cars out, that's part of the science. It's what the driveline does when it's when it's down in the racetrack like we run them.
You saw Michael Annett, teammate to Clint Boyer, who was 20th quickest. Here are the 10 drivers who are sitting out this practice. I know we heard from Kurt Busch's team earlier that they are still repairing their car from damage and would not be running at all today. Quite a number of these drivers were out in session 1. Danica Patrick back out for a few laps. She has the 13th quickest lap of this session. 194.5.
Tell you, Danica's an athlete. She plays golf and she's very good at it. We see her do her yoga. She does a lot of stuff. I mean, she works hard.
I saw pictures that she took the media to school to yoga class the other day.
I'm going to take it a step further, DW. I think she's one of the most fit drivers out there.
I tell you what, if she shakes your hand, you will know that she shook your hand. The first time she shook my hand, she said, "Okay, you're just showing off." That's how she's strong.
12.5 minutes to go in this session. Welcome back to Daytona. No change in the top, let's see, 20. Brian Vickers at 20th right now, displacing Michael Annett. That's the only change. I might have been wrong about Robert Richardson, because Michael McDowell could be the happiest man in all of Daytona after last night and the Joe Falk, Levine family racing with Circle Sport merging this year. 2 cars here at the 500. Got in on time, trying to race his way in, and did. Awesome. Great job.
59, Robert Presley, right?
Well,
yeah,
once upon a time,
I used to race against him in the
Heck yeah.
Busch Grand National Series.
Here's Matt.
Mike, due to the wind tunnel numbers, which were excellent, and the speed in the 41 car, Kurt Busch and Tony Gibson wanted to put forth every effort they could to repair this car for Sunday's 500. Now, they stayed 2 hours till midnight last night, came in at 7 a.m., about 7.5 hours total work time to make the whole right side look anew again. A lot of effort.
Yeah, it's just, you know, the whole Stewart-Haas company. As a company, we brought actually the fabricators who put the body on this car originally were down here, so it worked out good. They knew the car, they knew where the measurements needed to be put at. We brought templates with us, and then this morning, once we got the side on it, we went over to NASCAR and put the templates on it, and satisfied them, satisfied ourselves, and so, you know, it's the best piece we got in our company. Kurt loved the way it drove the other night. Had good speed, handling great, so we put the effort in, and the guys did a great job.
You know, one thing that was funny earlier, Norman Negree, who is a veteran as far as binding hanging, Mike, DW knows him well, and Norman was sanding so hard over certain parts of the Bondo, and Tony got on him joking around because Norman's been in it since the 60s because his father was an independent racer. He says, you know what, sandpaper has changed a little bit from the old school days. You don't have to push so hard.
Yeah, Ed Negree was his dad. He was an independent racer back in the day.
And Tony's one of the best old school crew chiefs. He's from here in Daytona Beach. Great guy. Now, you mentioned Robert Presley. Did you know, now Robert's a second-generation racer. His dad, Bob, was one of the Busch Series greats.
Number 4.
His son, Robert's son, Coleman Presley, is A.J. Allmendinger's spotter.
Oh, I did not know that. Yeah. I've heard that name, but
Neither did I, but Jimmy Hicks handed me this page and pointed right there. So
yeah, I raced with Bob Presley in the number 4 car.
Yep.
He and the Jackson brothers from up there in Asheville, and then later on with Robert, and never raced with the younger Presley kid, but great racing family.
Yeah, Robert was a lot of fun to race with. man, their short track program, there were times you just went to a racetrack and you knew you were going to finish no better than second to Robert Presley.
And then Robert went on to become a racetrack promoter.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, short tracks over in Tennessee.
Good guy, too. Really good guy.
So here are the Richard Petty Motorsports cars, now numbered 43 and 44 for Eric Almirola and Brian Scott.
I like that. I like that they got the 44 back out there on the track. You know, that was a long time Petty number, and it's great seeing the 43 and the 44.
Yeah, I hate that Brian had trouble in the race there and wrecked his car, but this team, I really think this team will surprise a lot of people.
Well, let's stay in the 40s. Here's Jamie.
In the 47, A.J. Allmendinger out on the track in your backup car. You turned 12 laps. What's your thoughts about it?
It actually seems to have about the same speed as our primary car, which is a good thing. It's what we were hoping for. So I know my guys will go to work on the Kroger Scott Product Chevy, do a couple of fine-tuning little things, but we don't have any race cars left, so we're going to stay away from the race cars, and I think we're done.
Tomorrow, any drafting for you?
No, I'll be maybe hitting some golf balls. That's about it.
That's good for your mental game, right, AJ? Bye.
Thanks, Jamie. There's one fellow just about always has a smile on his face. Living the dream. David Reagan running with Michael Waltrip, Matthew Benedetto. Now those are teammates. Those are all the BK Racing cars. Well, 3 of the 4 as practice rolls on in Daytona. 3.5 minutes to go in the second of 2 Sprint Cup practices today. Lots more to come here on FS1, including qualifying for the Camping World Truck Series and their race tonight. The first point-paying checkered flag of Speed Weeks is this evening.
Jeff, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
It just dawned on me, and I'm sure that you can answer this. When you're just practicing, like if you leave the the garage and come out on a pit road, do you have to maintain somewhat of a speed limit on pit road, or can you just go down pit road as fast as you want to?
I think if NASCAR saw you, just take off super fast. But yeah, as long as there's no other cars, when sometimes they'll park the trucks or park the Xfinity cars out there getting ready for a qualifying session, then they really discourage you, and you'll hear the spotter will come on and say, hey, maintain a decent speed. But when there's no cars like we have right now, yeah, you can shoot down there about as fast as you want.
Perfect. Well, the reason I asked, I just saw a car come out of the garage, looked like you really took off down pit road fast. So I'm assuming there was no pit road speed in practice, or at least something within reason.
A lot of dots there on the front of Carl Edwards' car. That is so when they are videotaping, or they're recording, there's no more tape. When they're recording this practice run digitally, those number and position of dots when they're reviewing the video help determine which practice session and which run that particular footage or video was from.
Now when you do it the way they did it, they got really creative. They're just messing with the other teams because they know other teams are probably trying to take pictures of their cars, trying to figure out what run they're on. But they're getting real fancy there, artistic.
Well, that's 5 greens, and then you got these 2 reds over here, or orange, whatever.
And that may be just something.
I think that's code.
And it could be code to the team telling them something as well.
It's code. Let's just say it's code.
I think you're right.
Oh, look, 5 circles and 2 diamonds.
Oh,
that's
diamonds.
what I say. Yeah,
okay.
It's definitely code.
I'll raise you a club and a heart.
Here's the old-fashioned way.
See, no code here. It's just the way we do it.
Store-bought.
And you talk about code. Sometimes you'll hear Brad Keselowski in the Penske cars. They'll talk on code in their radio conversations, trying to keep the other teams from figuring out when they're going to pit, maybe what they're going to do on pit stops. It's really interesting to hear some of the teams and what formats they're using there.
I'm glad you said that, because I sometimes wonder if Brad doesn't always speak in codes.
Now.
Just kidding,
Well, Clint Boyer running right on top of his speed in the early practice session. And that would be good if he was on page 1 of the speed chart. But he's down at 27th and apparently still searching.
Yeah, you could hear the tire slide there a little bit.
You can see him shaking it. You can see him shaking in the car.
I'll be honest, when you're in the car driving it, you really can't hear that. You sort of feel the front tires start to lose control a little bit. as we see Clint Boyer come to pit road. He came really hard. I mean, that was an aggressive run, and you see the right front lock up, and that's how you really know whether it's locked up. We heard it because of where the microphones are inside the car, but when you're driving the car, you really don't hear that. But what you do, you feel the car start to drift off as that right front tire locks up. You'll feel it drift off to the right, and you know that you must be locking up a tire.
I think he was on the splitter. I mean, it looked to me like the car was maybe on the splitter.
We had a lot of problems last year getting to pit road, more at Talladega than here at Daytona. This one's a little smoother than Talladega is, but you can very easily get on the splitter and limit the travel and really start having issues locking the front tires up getting to pit road.
That will end this second practice for today. No change in the top 10 late in the sessions. A couple of changes down toward the bottom of the top 20 as Toyota and Ford dominate this second practice. 30 cars went out on track just in the closing moments there. David Reagan, Kyle Larson up into the top 20. "30 participated, 10 stayed home." They'll all have a shot at final practice tomorrow live on FS1, and your race engine must be in the car in time for final practice. Jamie.
And Matt Kenseth was able to take that back out. You've never raced it before. What's your impression of it?
Well, there's not much of a group out there, so you don't really know until you get into traffic. But we seem to have pretty good speed. Got to run with my teammates a little bit there, so that was encouraging. Even the single car speed was, seemed like it was pretty much as good as the other cars. So these guys all build great race cars. I feel pretty bad that I've been wrecking them all. So I appreciate all the work they're doing, and hopefully we'll get this thing all tuned in tomorrow and be good on Sunday.
All right, 90-minute practice tomorrow. We'll see him out there again.
Thanks, Jamie. He will forfeit his outside front row starting spot for the Daytona 500 by having to go to a backup car. Next, Xfinity Series final practice. That's an impound race, so they'll be all done after today. Qualify tomorrow, race tomorrow. NASCAR Race Hub at 4. Camping World Truck Series qualifying at 4:30, and then the Camping World setup at 7, leading to their season opener tonight.
You know, it was almost like group practice. 5 Toyotas, 4 Fords, 5 Chevrolets. They all went out and ran as teammates.
Lots more NASCAR coming to you from Daytona on FS1. Keep it right here. We're your home for NASCAR during Speed Weeks 2016.